What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast hosted by Joey Chestnut. I hope all of you are having a great Wednesday afternoon, and I'm excited to be able to bring you another hour or so of sports over the next hour. I just uploaded my episode from yesterday where I discussed the Celtics signing Danilo Gallinari and trading for Malcolm Brogdon. I also talked about the Red Sox recent struggles from their big three, Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, and JD Martinez. And then also I discussed Rudy Gobert being traded to Minnesota Timberwolves, along with an update on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant's future with the Brooklyn Nets. So today I'm going to be taking some time to talk about some of the biggest moves in free agency so far, who signed where, who got big extensions, who is still left in the market, etc. I'm going to talk about the big stars first, and then also talk about some really good role players, and then also break down who's still left in free agency to pick up for bench depth. After that, I'm going to talk about the Red Sox. Tonight's a big night for the Red Sox. Their top pitching prospect, Brayan Bello, will be making his MLB debut tonight. Then I will discuss Joey Chestnut winning yet again another title in the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. At the end, I will talk about the biggest news in the NFL world today, which is Baker Mayfield being traded to the Carolina Panthers from the Cleveland Browns for a conditional fifth-round pick. Anyway, so to start things off with the NBA free agency frenzy started off very hot in day one. To start things off, Grizzlies point guard John Morant agreed to a 5-year, $193 million extension. That deal could get up to $231 million. So that deal keeps him in Memphis through the 2028 season. Previous largest Grizzlies contract was point guard Mike Conley for $153 million in 2016. So this new $193 million extension that could be worth up to $231 million, as I said, completely shatters that previous largest contract in Memphis history. Morant's coming off a historic 27.4 point per game season, 5.7 rebounds and 6.7 assists per game. He was a 2022 All-Star starter and is very well deserving of this new deal. He was a former second overall pick in the NBA draft and really is one of the brighter stars in the NBA, especially after how great of a season he had this season for Memphis. He's definitely the future of the league, and I'm excited to see him ball out even more with this new contract. And he finally got his payday. He actually just gave $500 to a waitress at a restaurant. I just saw on Twitter that he gave $500 to a waitress as a tip at a restaurant and completely made her day. So that was a really nice touch and shows he's a really good kid as well. So congratulations to Ja on a big payday. I'm a big fan of him. Next, Timberwolves center Karl-Anthony Towns agreed to a 4-year, $224 million supermax extension to stay with Minnesota. He'll now be paired with Rudy Gobert, which I talked about in my episode yesterday that I just uploaded today. Karl-Anthony Towns has averaged double-digit rebounds per game in 6 of his 7 years in the NBA. Was just under 10 rebounds per game this last season at 9.8 rebounds a game on average. He's coming off a 24.6 point per game season, which was 11th in the NBA in scoring per game average, 9.8 rebounds, 3.6 assists per game, and then also 1 steal per game, 1.1 blocks per game, 41% shooting from 3, 52.9% shooting from the floor, which was 16th in the NBA. He was 8th in the NBA with 642 field goals made, 9th in the NBA in points scored with 1,818 points. He was 10th in the NBA in total rebounds this past season with 727 rebounds. So all of this proves how good of a player Karl-Anthony Towns is. I think he's gets criticized a ton. I think I'm a very big fan of him. So in my opinion, I see him as a very underrated star. But I know a lot of people aren't too big of fans of him. But at the end of the day, I don't think many people would know this. And I just found this in my research, as I said in my episode that I recorded yesterday. I did a ton of research for last episode and then this episode as well to prove how great some of these players are that get a lot of criticism, which I did Russell Westbrook 4 episodes ago, probably now. And then I talked about Rudy Gobert in my episode yesterday. And then today's one, I'm going to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns a little bit. Not many people would know this, if any would, but Karl-Anthony Towns is 6th among active players in the NBA with a career 119.51 offensive rating. So it just shows how effective he is on the offensive end. And I know his defense isn't that elite. It isn't great. But it's getting better at least. I think now with Rudy Gobert with him, I think he's going to become even better. I think he's going to improve heavily on the defensive end. I'm excited to see him and Gobert be probably the best front court duo in the NBA. I don't know if there's going to be any other ones that are going to even be close. I don't think anyone can really even compete on their defensive end, defensive rebounding end, or the offensive rebounding against these two guys. 2 of the best rebounds in the NBA on the same team. It's going to be a scary sight. Kind of brings me back to the Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond days in Detroit when they were just absolutely bodying teams on the board. Just absolutely dominating on the glass. And that's what I think Karl-Anthony Towns and Gobert are going to do now in Minnesota. I like this duo a lot. I think both of them are very underrated, especially considering how much criticism they get. I think it's unwarranted. I think they're both great players. I think they're only going to become better this year, too. So the next player I'm going to talk about is Suns shooting guard Devin Booker, who also agreed to a supermax extension worth $224 million over the next 4 seasons. He's coming off a career best 26.8 point per game average, which was 8th in the NBA, and a career best 5 rebounds per game as well. He had a career high in 3-point percentage, 38.3% from 3, and a career best 1.1 steals per game. So he had career highs in 4 categories, that is, points per game, rebounds per game, 3-point percentage, and then also steals per game. Then you look at it over his career, he's a 3-time All-Star, a 2022 first-team All-NBA selection. He was 3rd in the NBA in points scored in the 2019-2020 season with 1,863 points scored. And then also he's 2nd in that same season, 2019-2020 season, in the NBA with a 91.9% free throw percentage. So very good player. He was a big reason they made to the NBA Finals in the 2021 season. And I'm sure Phoenix fans are very excited about having him locked up for 4 extra years added on with that Supermax extension. So he'll be a Phoenix Sun now for more years to come. So I'm sure they're excited. And to be specific, he will be a Phoenix Sun now through the 2027-2028 NBA season. So 4 extra years added on to the 2 years he already had left on his current deal. So he'll be a Phoenix Sun for the next 6 years at least, which I'm sure a lot of Phoenix fans are very excited about, especially with how well he's been playing over the last 3 or 4 seasons now. The next player I'm going to talk about is Nuggets center Nikola Jokic. Signed the largest contract in the NBA, in NBA history, that is. 5 years, $270 million. Coming off a career best 27.1 points per game, which was 6th in the NBA. 13 8-point rebounds per game, which is a career best as well, and was 2nd in the NBA. 7.9 assists per game, which was 8th in the NBA. 1.5 steals per game, which was also a career best. 0.9 blocks per game, which was also a career best. And then he was also number 1 in the NBA in total rebounds with 1,019 rebounds. He was 10th in the NBA with 109 steals. The 2-time MVP, who's been MVP now each of the last 2 seasons, is such a prolific and dynamic player, and I think everyone knows when you watch him play, he can do everything in the offensive end and defensive end in transition. He can help you on the playmaking side. He can help you on the scoring side. He can help you with the rebounding side, the steals side, the defensive side, getting the passing lanes. He can do everything. 4-time All-Star selection as well. 2-time starter in each of the last 2 seasons. And as I said, he can do everything out there, which is proven heavily by this statistic that I'm going to say right now that I found, again, in my research, was that Jokic was number 1 in the NBA this past season with 15.2 win shares, and was also number 1 in the NBA with 19 triple-doubles. He can really do everything. He can help you playmaking-wise, scoring-wise, defensively, getting in the passing lanes, shot blocking, rim protection, covering the paint, scoring in the paint, posting up. He can help you in every single aspect of the game. Nikola Jokic is one of a kind, and that's a reason he got that huge payday. $270 million over 5 years, which is good enough at $54 million a year. The largest contract in NBA history, and rightfully so. Very deserving of it with how well he's been playing over the last 3 seasons now. 2 straight MVP awards, 2 straight years being an MVP, as I said, in the NBA, but then also 2 straight years being an All-Star starter, and also is a 4-time All-Star selection, coming off career best in points per game, rebounds per game, steals per game, blocks per game, and was also in the NBA leaderboard in points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, in the top 10 in each of those. 6th in points per game, 2nd in rebounds per game, and 8th in assists per game. So very deserving of it. He's also 10th in the NBA in steals, total steals with 109. So it just shows how dynamic of a player he is and how he can do everything that you need, especially considering the fact he's a 2-time MVP and is a center, and he can help you in every aspect of the game. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. He's very deserving of that new contract of $54 million a year. And that contract will keep him in Denver now through the 2027-2028 NBA season. So similar to Devin Booker, they'll both be free agents in the 2028 offseason. So huge contract addition for him, getting just about $54 million a year, and won't be a free agent until 2028. So he really got a payday. He was already making $32 million this past season. Now gets an even bigger payday at $54 million, just about on average per year. I mean, the first 3 years of that deal, the 2023, 2024, and 2025 NBA seasons, he'll be getting 46, 50, and 53 million. It really just goes up every single year by 4 million. So it goes from 46 to 50 to 53 to 57 to 61 each year for yearly cash, according to his cap hit on Spot Track. So he'll be making more and more money every single year, and as I said, rightfully so. The next player I'm going to talk about is Wizards shooting guard Bradley Beal. Signed a huge extension with the Washington Wizards, 5 years, $251 million. He only played 40 games this past season. He was battling injuries, but he still averaged 23.2 points per game, even battling a torn ligament in his wrist. Wasn't the same exact player that he was 2 seasons ago now. In the 2019-2020 season, he averaged 30.5 points per game, and then 31.3 points per game in the 2020-2021 NBA season. So in the 2 seasons prior to this last one, 30.5 points per game and 31.3 points per game. Did go down a little bit this year, obviously being 23.2 points per game on average. But as I said, battled that torn ligament in his wrist. And even with that torn ligament, he did have a career high 6.6 assists per game this past season. So he became a lot more of a playmaker. He was always a great scorer, and he became even more of a playmaker this past season, looking for the open guy and trying to dish assists to his teammates. Only playing 40 games, I said, so he missed more than half the season, but still ends up getting a huge payday, 5 years, $251 million, so just about $50 million per year. Part of his deal is a no-trade clause, which allows Beal to have the power of giving consent before he's traded to a different team. If he were to be traded, he could say if he wants to go or not. And according to ESPN NBA insider Bobby Marks, Beal is the 10th player in NBA history to have a no-trade clause, and he's currently the only player in the NBA with one right now. And Marks also explained that the eligibility for it is that a player must have 8 years of experience in the NBA, along with 4 years with the team he is signing the deal with. So Bradley Beal qualified for it and then made it part of his contract, his new contract with the Washington Wizards. People talk about how loyal he is to that Wizards team, and rightfully so. He very much is loyal, staying there. Obviously, some guys could leave and try to go win a ring, but I guess he's committed to Washington. And also, he's getting a payday, too, at the same time, so it's not like he's getting off easy, but he is getting a heavy payday and also giving up the chance to win somewhere else, as I'm sure all 29 other teams in the NBA would love to have him. So those 5 guys, between Morant, Beal, Jokic, Towns, and Booker, the 5 guys I mentioned now, the 5 biggest names that so far signed extensions or signed deals in the NBA offseason, signed for a combined $1.1 billion in the first day of free agency in the NBA. Absolutely ridiculous. 5 guys for a combined $1.1 billion. And that's why I talked about those 5 guys first, the 5 biggest names, obviously, and then also $1.1 billion altogether, which is absolutely nuts. The next guy I'm going to talk about, Bulls shooting guard Zach LaVine, agreed to stay in Chicago on a 5-year, $215 million extension. In his 5 seasons with the Bulls, he has averaged 24.4 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 46.8 shooting from the floor, and 38.9% shooting from 3. The 2-time All-Star will now be tied to the Chicago Bulls through the 2026-2027 NBA season, so he won't be a free agent, an unrestricted free agent, that is, until the 2027 offseason. He does have a player option in the 2026-2027 season, so he could technically opt out and be a free agent in the 2026 offseason. But as of now, it seems like he will be a Chicago Bull through his age 31 season. So it's a great pickup for the Chicago Bulls team to keep him locked up for another 4 years, especially with the money he's getting. 5 years, that is, not 4 years, but an extra 5 years onto that deal. $215 million. And as I said, in his 5 years in the Bulls, he was their best player, averaging over 24 points per game to go along with 46% shooting from the floor and 39% from 3. So very good play, and that's such a great extension for them, especially considering how good he has been as a Chicago Bull. He's now making around $43 million per year. So it's not like they paid nothing to keep him around. They gave him a lot of money, $43 million per year, but to keep him a Chicago Bull through his age 31 season, that's a great pickup for them, and I'm sure Chicago fans are very excited about that. So a couple other things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 other signings within the NBA, and then I'll also give you guys another update probably tomorrow, just because I want to talk about Brayan Bello a lot in this episode. That was supposed to be the primary thing. I'll talk more about the NBA free agency, hopefully in an episode tomorrow. But a couple other things. Clippers backup center Isaiah Hartenstein signed a 2-year, $16 million deal with the New York Knicks. He really revitalized his career and sparked heavy interest in free agency this year as a result. He played very well this past season for the Clippers off the bench, averaging 8.3 points per game, 4.9 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists, and 1.1 blocks. He shot 14 of 30 from three this past season, really started developing an outside shot, especially towards the end, and will only get more confident, I'm sure, the more he shoots. He had a 46.7% shooting percentage from three, and before last season in LA, he was a career 4 for 17 three-point shooter at 23.5% from three. So he shot 17 threes in his career before this season in LA and shot 30 this year and hit 14 of them. So he started developing an outside shot, and I'm sure he's going to become even better in New York the more he shoots. He talked about going back to the Clippers, but the Clippers just didn't have enough money to give him, especially considering he got $8 million a year. The Clippers could only give him around $2 or $3 million for this upcoming season. But I'm sure he's going to do big things in New York, and him just wanting to go back, his desire just to want to return to that LA Clippers team and potentially turn down more money shows that this Clippers team really has built a winning culture, and it just shows how great of a coach Tyronn Lue is and how great a family that Clippers team has. If guys want to potentially give up making $8 million per year when they haven't been paid yet, Isaiah Hartenstein hasn't got paid in his career really at all, he would potentially give up, he thought about potentially giving up an $8 million per year deal to stay in LA. It just shows how great a coach Tyronn Lue is, and that Clippers team really has a great chemistry. So the next signing I want to talk about is another LA Clipper free agent, Nick Batum. He re-signed with the Clippers for an $11 million per year average, 2 years, $22 million. In his 2 years with the LA Clippers, he has averaged 8.2 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 0.6 blocks, to go along with 40.2% shooting from three this past season. He started 54 or 59 games this past year, but I'd imagine he goes back to playing off the bench with the return of Kawhi Leonard. Batum's now 33 years old. Will be 34 years old right around the 1 month, 2 month mark of the NBA season. He turns 34 in December. So him coming off the bench won't be the worst thing, especially with him playing 14 years in the NBA. I mean, he's had such a great career, and he's had success coming off the bench and being in the starting lineup. So I'm sure he'll be fine with either one. One big thing about him is how great he is of a three-point shooter. His 2 years, I said, in LA. I said this maybe in my episode 5 or 6 when I was talking about the LA Clippers free agents. His 2 years with the LA Clippers are his second and third best three-point field goal percentages of his NBA career. So he really revitalized his career and found a role in LA, so I'm not surprised with him returning, even though a ton of teams wanted him, the Celtics, Heat, Sixers, Lakers. A lot of contenders wanted him, but he decided to return to LA, which is his home, especially considering the Clippers really brought him in 2 years ago now, when his career really could have been over. Similar to Reggie Jackson. Both of their careers probably were going downhill. They probably thought this was the tail end, and then they revitalized completely in LA, and that just shows how great of a coach Tyronn Lue is, and that culture that he's built. The LA Clippers really are a great foundation for taking guys in that are at the tail end of their career and then getting everything they can out of them and then revitalizing them. And I think that's what John Wall's going to do. I'm going to talk about John Wall again in a second, but I think that's what John Wall's going to be able to do in this Clippers team. Speaking of John Wall, his deal became official. He signed a 2-year, $13 million deal with the Clippers, the taxpayer mid-level exception. He has not played an NBA game since April 23rd of 2021. His injury history is crazy. He had surgeries on both of his knees in 2016. He had bone spurs in his left heel in 2019, torn Achilles in his left foot in 2019 as well. So he hasn't really played much over the last 4 years. He signed a 4-year, $170 million contract in 2019. In year one of it, he did not play a single game. He earned $38.3 million. He earned $41.3 million in year two, playing just 40 games for the Houston Rockets. In year three, he played 0 games, getting $44.3 million. And then year four technically would have been this season, and he played no games for the Houston Rockets for this upcoming season, obviously since he was bought out. But he took $40.9 million of his $46 million he was owed this upcoming season from Houston after a $6.5 million payout. So all in all, in 3 years in Houston, he made $164.8 million and played only a total of 40 games, which is absolutely nuts. In the 2020-2021 NBA season, he did play 40 games for the Houston Rockets, coming off an Achilles injury, and had a very good season, averaging 20.6 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, 7 assists, which is great, still a great playmaker, 40% shooting from the floor, 32% shooting from three, 1.1 steals per game, and 1 block per game. I'm not sure who will stop between him and Reggie Jackson, but the Clippers desperately need another point guard, and they made it happen. And with the addition of John Wall, whether it's him coming off the bench or Reggie Jackson, once again, the Clippers bench that is already the most stacked bench in the NBA. The Clippers have the most depth in the NBA, and it's not even close. Adding John Wall to that team means Reggie Jackson or John Wall are going to be coming off the bench. Your bench automatically is better than it was, and that's hard to do since the Clippers bench has been the best in the NBA over the last season and will be this upcoming season as well. So I'm excited to see who will start between those two guys. If I had to pick right now, I'd say it's Reggie Jackson and John Wall will come off the bench, but who knows? I mean, it's up to Tyronn Lue. Another guy the Clippers signed, another free agent of theirs, Amir Coffey, returned to the Clippers for a 3-year, $11 million deal. Another great bench piece in weapon for Tyronn Lue's Clippers. He was a star in the G League for the Clippers, averaging 14.8 points per game in the 2019-2020 G League season, shooting 40% from three. He had a 48.3% field goal percentage in 16 games in the 2019-2020 season. Then in the 2020-2021 G League season, he averaged 18.4 points per game. And with the Clippers injuries this year, he got a bigger chance he did the last couple years before this one, and was phenomenal, averaging 9 points per game, 2.9 rebounds, 37.8% shooting from three, 45.3% shooting from the field, and was an 86.3% free throw shooter. He even started a good amount of games towards the end of the season for that Clippers team. So such a great addition, bringing him back to that Clippers bench. And I'm sure Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, they're very excited about, since they have a guy that can come off the bench at any point, at any time, that has starting experience like Nick Batum and can relieve them of their duties and give them a break. Especially now with that Clippers team getting older, obviously Kawhi Leonard, Paul George being injury-plagued players over the last few years, they have to take nights off to be able to rest, and this Clippers team can afford that. Now they have such a good lineup when everyone's healthy, and such a good team off their bench that they can even sit guys in their starting lineup. Kawhi Leonard could sit a game or two a week, and same thing with Paul George because of how good that bench is. They'll be able to survive without them, and as long as they're healthy by the playoffs, I don't think anyone's going to beat that Clippers team. That Clippers team could survive without Paul George or Kawhi Leonard one or two games a week because how deep that bench is. You have Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, Amir Coffey, Marcus Morris, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, Ivica Zubac, Reggie Jackson, John Wall. They could survive a couple games without Paul George or Kawhi Leonard every other night or so. Which I'm not saying I want those guys to sit out, but if they want a night or a week to rest, I'm fine with that. As long as those two guys are healthy by the playoffs, this Clippers team is by far the best team in the NBA in my eyes, and I don't think there's anyone that's close. And of course, that has to do with injuries. When they're healthy, I think they're the best team in the NBA, and I don't think it's close. Obviously, if injuries happen, it's a different circumstance, but I think they're the best team in the NBA from top to bottom, and I don't think I don't think you can deny that. I don't think you can deny how deep of a team they have. They're the deepest team in the NBA, and I don't even think you can argue against that. Anyways, now I want to move on to another player, Jusuf Nurkic, Trailblazers center, was a free agent. He re-signed with the Portland Trailblazers, 4 years, $70 million. In 56 games this year, he averaged 15 points per game, 11.1 rebounds per game, which was a career high, also was ninth in the NBA, 2.8 assists per game, 53.5% shooting from the floor. He only played 45 games in the previous two seasons heading into this last one. So the 2019-2020 season and the 2020-2021 season. He only played 45 games combined in the previous two seasons. He had a broken leg and a fractured wrist. Both those injuries caused him to miss a ton of games. But now he's going to be back for them, 4-year deal to help them in the paint. Then you look at the Blazers also signing Anthony Simmons, who was also a free agent of theirs, to a new deal, 4 years, $100 million to stay in Portland. He averaged 17.3 points per game, 2.6 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 40.5% shooting from three, and was an 88% free throw shooter this past season. He started in 27 games after Damian Lillard got hurt. Damian Lillard went down with an injury, a season-ending abdominal injury, and after that, he really started. Anthony Simmons started just about every game he played and started in the last 27 games that he played in. So became a key player on that Portland team when Damian Lillard was out. And in that stretch, he was terrific for the Blazers. They also traded C.J. McCollum in February, so Anthony Simmons was really all they had offensively. And if you look at it, over the course of that stretch, the last 27 games of the season, he averaged 23.4 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 45.6% shooting, and 42.3% shooting from three. He did suffer a patella tendon injury in March and missed the rest of the NBA season, but he still got a great payday at $25 million per year, and I'm sure he'll be even better this year with Damian Lillard being back. That starting lineup is going to be a lot better than it was. So next, Zion Williamson, 2019 former first overall pick, signed a 5-year, $193 million rookie max extension to stay with the New Orleans Pelicans for an extra 5 years, added on to the deal he already had. He has only played 85 games in his NBA career, but just secured a $193 million payday, guaranteed. He averaged 27 points per game in the 2020-2021 NBA season, shooting 61.1% from the floor. He did struggle shooting from three, though, in that season at 29.4% from the three-point line. Compare that to his rookie year, he shot 42.3%. 42.9%, from three, but was just 29.4% in that next season. He missed all of last season with a foot injury, but still got a huge payday at $193 million. So a lot of these guys I've mentioned to you, Bradley Beal, Zion Williamson, Anthony Simmons, guys that are coming off injuries that are still getting paid because of how good of a player they are when they are healthy. So Zion Williamson got his payday. Another guy that got a payday, Knicks center Mitchell Robinson re-signed with the Knicks, 4 years, $60 million to stay in New York. Second in the NBA in block percentage this past season, blocking 7.1% of opponent two-point field goal attempts when he was on the floor. He averaged 8.5 points per game, 8.6 rebounds per game, which is a career high, 1.8 blocks per game, and also had a career high 76.1% shooting from the floor. He was fourth in the NBA with 133 blocks, second in the NBA with 295 offensive rebounds, was 13th in the NBA with 8.5 win shares, so it shows how important of a player he is when he is healthy and when he's on the floor. He was a great anchor for that Knicks team, and obviously locking him up for an extra 4 years now. He was a free agent, could have gone anywhere. Locking him up for an extra 4 years shows he wanted to go back to New York, and he's only making $15 million a year. I'm sure he could have gotten maybe 18 to 20, especially considering how important of a player he is. 13th in the NBA with 8.5 win shares this past season. It shows how much an anchor he is and how important and how much impact he has when he is on the floor for that Knicks team, especially on the rebounding, on the glass, and defensively as being a rim protector with 1.8 blocks per game. And then also offensively, I mean, only averaged 8.5 points per game, but was very efficient shooting, 76.1% from the floor. Had a very good year. So not a bad pickup for the Knicks. Another pickup for the Knicks, Mavs free agent point guard Jalen Brunson officially signed a 4-year, $104 million deal with the New York Knicks. Brunson started the last 55 games he appeared in for the Mavericks last season, averaging 17.1 points per game, 3.9 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 39.2% shooting from three, 86.9% shooting from the free throw line, and 50.6% shooting from the floor over that stretch of 55 games that he appeared in the last 55, as I said. Overall, in the 79 games he appeared in last season, he averaged 16.3 points per game, 50.2% shooting from the floor, and 37.3% shooting from three. So he was a heavily recruited and pursued player by that Knicks team. They even made multiple trades on draft night, including draft night trades to dump salaries like Nerlens Noel and Kemba Walker in order to free up cap space to recruit him to New York. But he's going to really help out this Knicks team shooting-wise. I said 50.2% shooting from the floor and 37.3% shooting from three this past season, both of which the Knicks could use. And also 16.3 points per game, an extra scorer, a score that team needed. He's a playmaker as well. So very good pickup for that Knicks team, and I think he'll fit in well in New York. So speaking of New York basketball teams, now I'm going to talk about the other one. The Brooklyn Nets re-signed Nick Claxton to a 2-year, $20 million deal. 8.7 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 67.4% field goal percentage this past season, which all of them were career best in points per game, rebounds per game, and field goal percentage. He also improved his free throw percentage to 58.1%. I'm not sure how this team will look for Brooklyn next year, with who knows if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are coming back. But we do know Nick Claxton and Royce O'Neal, who I talked about already with them acquiring, will be a big part of their front court, even if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving aren't there. Another pickup for the Nets. They also signed guard T.J. Warren. He's famous for his performance in the 2020 NBA bubble. In his first 3 bubble games, he had the NBA world completely on notice. All of social media, everyone was talking about him. In those 3 first bubble games, he averaged 39.7 points per game off 65.2% shooting from the floor, to go along with 5.7 rebounds per game, 3.3 assists, 2.3 blocks, and 2 steals. He was all over the place in the offensive end, defensive end, hitting threes, shooting 65% from the floor, averaging 40 points per game with 2.3 blocks and 2 steals. He was just doing everything in that bubble, and he really was the most talked about player in all of the bubble for the first week. He was first team all-league in the bubble as well. Very steady and careful with the ball. He was 5th in the NBA in the 2016-2017 NBA season with a 6.1% turnover percentage per 100 plays. He was 4th in the NBA in turnover percentage in the 2017-2018 season with a 6.7% turnover percentage. And then was 6th in the NBA in the 2019-2020 season with a 7.2% turnover rate. So he rates very high in the turnover percentage every single year. It shows how careful he is with the ball and how good of a player he is when he is on the court. I mean, he can score, and he also is very careful, and that's what that Nets team especially needs. If Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are gone, they need another player that can score and then also take care of the ball. And he wouldn't be a bad pickup for any team. So the Nets picking him up, that's not a bad day at all for the Brooklyn Nets GM signing him. He has not played an NBA game since December 29th, 2020. He's only played in 4 games. Since the 2020-2021 NBA season. He played 4 games in that year. He missed all 68 of the other games that year, and then missed all of the 2021-2022 NBA season with surgery on his left foot to heal a stress fracture. I'm sure he's going to take it easy and probably take some days off within the NBA season, but he'll definitely help Brooklyn off the bench. He's a career 15.5 point per game scorer, 35.7% shooting from three, and 50.7% shooting from the floor. So a very good player when he is healthy, and very effective scorer and shooter from three. So not a bad pickup for the Brooklyn Nets at all. And I'm sure he had other suitors, considering how good of a player he is when he is healthy. He's one of the better role players in the NBA, even though he doesn't get talked to, enough about. Besides that bubble, he doesn't get talked enough about. So maybe now he'll be able to stay healthy in Brooklyn and get back in the news for how good of a player he is. Who knows if he'll go on another 39.7 point per game run. But that was one of the most exciting times in NBA history in the last 3 years, in my opinion, was that bubble run he had. It was just absolutely ridiculous watching him play. He was absolutely automatic out there. It was absolutely ridiculous. So now I'm going to transition to the Red Sox. I'm going to save some of the free agency news for the NBA for an episode I'm going to do tomorrow. But the Red Sox, the biggest news, Sox pitching prospect Brayan Bello will be making his MLB debut tonight against the Tampa Bay Rays. 23-year-old right-handed pitcher from the DR. He's a number 75 overall prospect on MLB.com. He's the Sox fourth best prospect and number one Sox pitching prospect. He's a 2021 minor league starting pitcher of the year for the Red Sox. In his 8 starts this year for the Worcester Red Sox, he's 6-2 with a 2.81 ERA, 72 strikeouts with 21 walks, 16 earned runs, and 51.1 innings pitched. In 6 starts this year for Double-A Portland, he was 4-2 with a 1.6 ERA, 42 strikeouts to 12 walks, and 6 earned runs and 33.2 innings. He was absolutely dominant. Combined between Double-A Portland and Triple-A Worcester, he has a 10-4 record with a 2.33 ERA, 114 strikeouts to 33 walks, 22 earned runs and 55 hits allowed and 85 innings pitched. He has a 1.035 whip over that stretch between Double-A Portland and Triple-A Worcester. And one thing about him is how great of a fastball he has. His fastball currently sits in the 96-98 range. He tops at 99, probably get to 100. He has a great changeup with depth, stays in the upper 80s, around 87, 88. That also has a very good slider as well that stays low to mid to 80s. And one interesting thing that I found out was that his 100th pitch and a June 26th start was 97 miles an hour. So he has a stamina to stay in all 8 innings that a manager would need him to stay in, especially a team like the Red Sox. They don't have a great bullpen, so every single inning they can crunch out of a starting pitcher is very key and very important. And now they even bolster their rotation even more. I know they've had injuries with Chris Sale and Nate Eovaldi being hurt. Garrett Whitlock became a starter and now is hurt, probably back to the bullpen. They're saying once he is back. Rich Hill being hurt now. The Red Sox really haven't had much help in their starting rotation health-wise, so now adding another pitcher, especially to this caliber, Brayan Bello is a huge addition to this Red Sox team. I'm very excited to see him pitch tonight. I think he'll be very good. I think he has a great future in the MLB with the Red Sox, especially considering how great his highlights are and how filthy his pitches are. I'm very excited to see him in a Red Sox uniform in tonight's game. So now to update you guys on how the Red Sox played last night against the Tampa Bay Rays. Nick Pivetta got lit up in 5.2 innings, allowed 8 hits and 7 earned runs, had 4 strikeouts and 2 walks. He made his season ERA rise from 3.23 to 3.68. But before last night, he allowed 2 or fewer runs in 9 of his last 11 starts heading into last night's game. So he's very good in 9 of his last 11 games. And before last night, over that 11-game stretch, he was 8-1 with a 1.95 ERA, 70 strikeouts to 19 walks, and 16 runs allowed and 74 innings pitched. With a 189 opponent batting average. So he's very dominant over that 11-game stretch. As I said, 195 ERA, 189 opponent batting average, and was also 8-1, and struck out 70 guys in 74 innings. So he was very good, and so I guess he was due for a bad game, and last night just wasn't it for that Red Sox team. But heading into last night, the Sox won 4 straight Nick Pivetta starts, so that's really impressive. JD Martinez had a great game last night. I did talk about it in my episode yesterday of how much he was struggling, but he had a very good game for the Red Sox last night, going 3 of 5. He did strike out twice, did score a run though, and had 2 doubles. Another player I was talking about was Xander Bogaerts and how much he was struggling at the plate. He was 1 of 3 last night with a 2-run home run, his first home run since June 3rd. He also had 3 RBIs and a run scored. He had his first RBI since June 16th last night, so it's very good to see him at least start to get going, even if it's just 1 hit. It was only 1 home run. I'm sure it will give him more confidence now, and hopefully he plays better now for the next 2 weeks, since the Red Sox have a really tough stretch playing the Tampa Bay Rays and New York Yankees for 14 of the next 14 games heading into the All-Star break. Trevor Story hit his 14th home run last night. He was 1 of 5 with 3 strikeouts, though, but his power numbers are there, 14 home runs. The Sox were 2 of 12 with runners in scoring position and left 11 runners on base. Tonight is a rubber match for the Red Sox, with Bello making his long-awaited debut. It's 1-1 in the series with Tampa Bay, so if the Sox can win tonight, it'll get them back on track heavily and hopefully give them a lot of luck going into tomorrow night's starting of the series with the New York Yankees. The series opener is tomorrow in Boston. So the last thing I want to talk about is the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. The competition returned to the outdoors for the first time at Coney Island since 2019, and that's because of the pandemic. The last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, those contests were both not at Coney Island, outside and open to the fans, unfortunately. But this last one yesterday, 2 days ago now, they had 35,000 fans there. A lot of fans were there, very excited. Got to see Joey Chestnut earn his 7th title in a row now, his 15th title out of 16 years. He even put a protester in a chokehold and tackled him mid-contest. Still ended up putting down 63 hot dogs in 10 minutes. It was his fewest amount since 2015, but he still averaged 6.3 hot dogs per minute. And one thing that I found out was that only 2 competitors in the history of the contest have reached 63 hot dogs besides Joey Chestnut. And even though that was his lowest one since 2015, only 2 other people in the history of the contest have reached 63. So that's absolutely ridiculous. Shows how dominant he is. He had 41 hot dogs at the halfway point with 5 minutes to go. At that rate, he was averaging 8.2 hot dogs per minute. Chestnut did reach 70 hot dogs in all of the 6 previous contests heading into this one this year. He had 71, 75, and 76, respectively, in his last 3 years. But he only ended up getting 63 this year. But hey, it was still enough to win. Still ended up winning $10,000 for coming in first place. And one guy I want to talk about is Geoffrey Esper of Oxford, Massachusetts. He's a school teacher. He came in second place, putting down 47.5 hot dogs. He won $5,000 for coming in second, consuming over 12,500 calories in the process. He did come in 4th place in the 2018 one, ended up coming in second now, so he improved his position. His previous record was 51, so he did come 3.5 hot dogs and buns short of that, but still very impressive coming in second with 47.5 hot dogs. Esper was second to Joey Chestnut, as I said. He was also next to Joey Chestnut, positioned next to him during the hot dog eating contest, but supposedly he didn't notice the protester until Joey Chestnut bumped into him, since Esper eats with his eyes closed. So really interesting that he didn't notice the protester next to him until he was bumped into, but he still ended up putting down 47.5 hot dogs. Chestnut still put down 63 hot dogs, so both those guys still had very good days, even considering there was a distraction in the middle of it. Esper ended up coming in second, which was the highest he's ever come, and then Chestnut still won first place. So even though there was a protester, they still both had very good days, obviously not reaching their career highs, but still coming in first and second. It's still impressive to be in second place, being a school teacher from Oxford, Massachusetts. Very cool that Massachusetts was represented very well on that stage. So congratulations to Esper on a great day, putting up 47.5 hot dogs and buns and coming in second place. So the last thing I want to talk about is Baker Mayfield. He was traded today from the Cleveland Browns to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional 2024 fifth-round pick, which could end up turning into a fourth-round pick depending on playing time. If he ends up playing 70% of snaps this upcoming season, it would end up becoming a fourth-round pick. But Baker Mayfield gets the fresh new start that he's wanted. Will now compete with Sam Darnold for the starting job. They both were first and third picks in the NFL draft in the 2018 draft. After the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson, it was inevitable that Baker Mayfield's time as a Cleveland Brown was going to be over. But now the Browns will be paying Baker Mayfield still $10.5 million on their cap hit this season. They still end up saving, though, $8 million since the Cleveland Browns, I said, picking up $10.5 million, but the Carolina Panthers will be paying $5 million of Baker's salary for this upcoming season. And then Baker Mayfield took a $3.5 million pay cut off his base salary in order to make the deal happen. So the Browns still end up saving about $8 million in the process. And now Baker Mayfield goes to the Carolina Panthers, where he's going to duke it out with Sam Darnold. The first pick and the third pick of the 2018 NFL Draft are going to be duking it out for the starting job, which is really interesting. It will be fun to watch in training camp. Baker Mayfield, his stats as a Brown, 59 career starts, 29-30 record, 92 touchdowns to 56 interceptions, had a 61.6% completion percentage, 23 touchdowns to 14 picks per season on average as a Brown. He led the Browns to their first playoff berth in 18 years in the 2020 season. The last time the Browns were in the playoffs was 2002, and he ended up getting them back in 2020, so their first time in 18 seasons. He also led the Browns to the first playoff win in 2020 since 1994. So he gave them their first playoff win in 26 seasons. So even though Baker Mayfield's time didn't work out as a Brown, giving them their first playoff win in 26 years really turned the corner for them. Baker threw 20-plus touchdowns in 3 or 4 seasons with the Browns. He's coming off a career-low 17 touchdowns this past year in 14 games, 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 3,010 passing yards, a 60.5% completion percentage, and a career-low 35.1 QBR according to ESPN's total quarterback rating. He also had 3 fumbles lost. The former 2-time AFC Offensive Player of the Week will now be competing with Sam Darnold. Also in that Panthers quarterback room is P.J. Walker and rookie Matt Corral. Matt Corral is a third-round pick in this last draft. In the 2022 NFL Draft, he was a third-round pick by the Carolina Panthers. Sam Darnold was acquired in April of 2021 from the New York Jets for a 4th-round pick and a 2nd-round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, then also a 6th-round pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. So he ended up going from being the starter in New York to being traded since the New York Jets wanted to move on and draft Zach Wilson. He ends up becoming a starter in Carolina, and now will be competing again for the starting job now with Baker Mayfield. In 11 starts this year with the Panthers, he was 4-7. He was placed on the IR in November with a shoulder injury. So in those 11 games he played, he had 2,527 passing yards, 9 touchdowns to 13 interceptions, 4 fumbles lost, and a 59.9% completion percentage. In his 4 seasons in the NFL, he's never played more than 13 games in a single season. He's missed at least 3 games of every season of his 4-year career. And he has a career total of 54 touchdowns to 52 interceptions and a 59.8% completion percentage. Supposedly, according to reports, Sam Darnold had a great spring camp. So the quarterback competition between the two quarterbacks the top 2 quarterbacks taken in the 2018 draft and the 2 of the 3 top picks of that same draft will be a fun training camp battle to watch. Side by side, neither player has ever made a Pro Bowl. Baker Mayfield, 27 years old, has a career 61.6% completion percentage, 92 touchdowns to 56 interceptions, has 5 rushing touchdowns, an 87.8 rating, has been sacked 134 times in 60 games, and has 27 fumbles, with 12 of those being lost. Sam Darnold, on the younger side, only 25 years old, just turned it recently. He has a 59.8% career completion percentage, 54 touchdowns to 52 interceptions, 10 rushing touchdowns, a 76.9 rating, was sacked 133 times in 50 career games, so just 1 less sack in 10 less career games than Baker Mayfield, so he's had a lot more pressure coming at him. 29 fumbles, with 11 of those being lost. It'll be a very interesting battle to watch. I'm very excited to see who ends up winning that. If it was my decision, I think, obviously, Sam Darnold hasn't had better numbers in his career, but I think he might be the better quarterback if he had a better situation around him. So if I had to pick, if it was my decision, I think I'd go with Sam Darnold. But both of those guys being, 2 of the top quarterbacks taken in the 2018 draft, and then also being 2 of the top 3 picks taken in the draft, and now battling it out in training camp, that's going to be so exciting to watch. So either way, no matter who wins it, it's going to be a storyline and something to follow all of July and August, which will be very interesting. I'm very excited to see who ends up winning that. But anyways, that concludes my episode. I'm going to be back again hopefully tomorrow to break down the other half of my NBA free agency frenzy. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. And I'm looking forward to being back on here again tomorrow to talk more about the NBA free agency frenzy. I have another half to talk about of other players signing and who went where. And I'll also talk about who's still left in the free agency market. And then I'll also talk about Chris Sale. He has a rehab start tonight with the Worcester Red Sox, which is really exciting. And then I'll also talk about Brayan Bello's MLB debut. Hopefully it'll be a good one. Anyways, thank you guys so much for taking time to listen to this. I really appreciate it, as always. It means a lot to me. I truly couldn't thank you enough for your support. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it and hope you guys have a great rest of your night. I'll see you guys again soon. Thank you.